I'm a coaching psychologist and I work with people who are in career transition, most notably women who are coming back from maternity leave. And that really comes off the back of me writing a book nearly 10 years ago now, Mother's Work, How to Get a Grip on Guilt and Make a Smooth Return to Work. I've got a team of really great colleagues who join me in coaching in many organisations that we partner with, and we absolutely love what we do, and together we are the Talent Keeper Specialists. We're based in St Albans, but our coaches are all across the country, so I'm based in St Albans, I should say. And I'd love just to start this morning by finding out where you work from, which organisations are you from today. So if you would type in the chat, that would be brilliant, and tell me where you are joining from. I know you're at home, most probably at home, but which organisations you represent today. And if you want to say what your role is, that would be great too. Westminster City School, I'm a teacher, brilliant. What else have we got? Facilities director. And now the teacher, Carolina from Westminster City School, there is a great resource called Maternity Teacher, Paternity Teacher. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but that'd be a really good thing to look at. And they're all about continuing professional development while people are away on leave. Right, I'm going to pull up some slides. So the first thing I thought we could talk about today are some of the challenges that people talk about in coaching sessions. I thought it would be really good for me this morning to draw upon the coaching work that I do, because I imagine that you're not dissimilar to the people who we're working with. And three of the most significant challenges that we hear about when people are preparing to come back from leave are: one, confidence, that feeling that you are not as good as you were, and a question of, can I still do it? I'm not sure I'm up to this, I've forgotten so much. So that's one of the biggest things that we hear. The second thing that we hear a lot about is people saying, how can I best reconnect with colleagues and raise my visibility? People often come back from maternity leave and they very much want to accelerate their career, or at least still prove that they are a player and prove that they are committed. And I think for lots of people who are working remotely, there comes an added challenge with how do you show people that you're back, and how do you become visible when you're not in an office and having those incidental meetings. And then the third thing is around establishing boundaries and getting the right blend of work and home. That's, again, this: how can I show people that I'm still committed yet have time for my family? How can I have time for myself, get my work done, and still be a good parent? So those are three challenges that I thought we could explore together this morning. And I'd really like us to get into your specific situations. After about 11:30, I'll open up the chat and I can answer some of your specific questions. So if you've got a question, please scribble it down as you think of it, so it's there when we go into the questions. Now, Chloe, I wanted to ask you whether you would put a poll up. I think we've got that there waiting. Could you put the poll up about which is your biggest challenge? So we should see this now. If I gave you a magic wand, which one of the following would you choose? Would you choose more confidence, greater connection and visibility at work with your colleagues, or better homework boundaries? So you're voting. It's always so much fun when we see these polls coming in. I love this. It's like being on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but no chance for £1 million. Okay, so that homework boundaries is really what you're saying is the biggest issue. Okay, thank you for polling. So we've got 17 of you responded. Right, we'll close that poll. Thank you, Chloe. So let's start then, let's move on. And so we had 59% of you saying better homework boundaries, 29% of you saying greater connection and visibility, and 12% of you said you want more confidence. I'm going to close that poll now, and let's move on and take a look at this first thing, confidence. So move on to that poll. I wanted to start really by just normalizing the kind of worries that we hear people talk about fairly frequently in coaching time. And these are some of the things that we hear time and again, this worrying about if there's still place in the team. What if the team has been fine without me? Do they still need me? And worrying about whether you can still do your job, worrying about how you compare to your cover is a big one, and worrying whether you'll get the flex that you need. And this is just the flavour. So if you've got more of those kind of what if worries whirling around your head, then it's absolutely fine and you are normal. I'm going to ask you all whether you would just pop in the chat whether some of those what if worries resonate with you, because it's nice for me to see, and for each of you actually to see whether other people are experiencing these things. So if you could pop in the chat whether these what if worries are something that resonate with you, that would be great. Have a look. Number 1 for sure, says Kelly. Yeah, we're still a place in the team. They all resonate with me. Yeah, says Kirsty. Yeah. Okay. Good to know that those do resonate, and they're completely normal. That's the point that I wanted to make, that if that's how you're feeling, that's completely normal. So what do we do with these what if worries then, and how do we build this sense of confidence? And I'm going to get through this fairly quickly, because given that only 12% of you said that this confidence thing is a big thing for you, I'll move through this at quite a pace. So I think that if there are 5 things that we can do to really harness a positive mindset that will help develop a confident approach to returning to work. And the first thing is really to remember that you are fresh, you are an asset. And although I imagine those of you who have got very young babies are not very well slept at the moment, and if you are, then huzzah and long may that continue, you're probably not feeling very fresh in the sleep department. But what I mean by that is about thinking of yourself as coming back to work and bringing something extra, that your period of leave means that you come back with a fresh perspective that your other team members don't have, because they've been in the thick of it, whereas you've gone away, you've done something different, you've probably been spending time thinking about other things, if not being with other people, given that, you know, where we are in the world, but you've had a different focus. So you come back and you do see the wood for the trees, which is terrific. So please remember that when you return to work, you do have a freshness and a great perspective that's helpful to the team. The second thing though about recalling past successes, if there is anyone here today who is yet to go on maternity leave, then here's a really good tip for you. We encourage the people who we're working with before they go on leave to either record a voice memo, a video, or write themselves a letter that they will then replay to themselves as they are preparing to return to work. And that voice memo or that video or that note that you write should answer 4 questions. And our 4 questions are these: what have I worked on this year? What am I proud of? What are other people telling me I've done well in this past year? And what am I looking forward to about coming back to work? Now imagine that you blurting that onto the page or onto a voice memo or a video, and then being able to replay that later on. That can just be so compelling and help you reconnect with the professional that you were. So if you haven't yet gone on leave and you're preparing, that's a really great thing to do. The third thing on this slide then is to remember to focus on what you bring. So if any of you have been thinking about, gosh, have I still got a place in my team? My cover has done wonderfully well, I'm hearing great things about her or him. Then what I want you to do is to think about what you bring, your unique strengths. And actually a couple of weeks ago we ran a free event. I'll tell you more about these at the end, but we ran a free event. They're called Comeback Conversations, and they're 45-minute problem solving sessions. And the very first one that we ran a couple of weeks ago was on imposter syndrome, and we've done a blog summarizing some of the key things that we answered in that 45-minute problem solving session. So if you want the link to that, I can tell you about where to go and have a look at that article at the end. The fourth thing on there is to remember that going back to work is a transition, it's not an event, and you'll feel very different about your abilities once you've been back in the office for a few weeks or months. And it's really unreasonable to expect yourself to snap back into work mode as soon as you're back. It doesn't happen like that. And any of you who have been on leave before will know it takes some time. And anecdotally speaking, people tell us that it takes anywhere between about 3 and 6 months before you feel like your head is properly back in the game. And that's not to say that you're not making a valuable contribution before then, because you absolutely are, but it's that feeling it in yourself that I'm back and I know what I'm doing. And even if you've done all of your 10 keep in touch days, or if you've been on shared parental leave and you've done split days, whatever it means, do a kit or a split day whilst we're working remotely, it's still normal not to hit the ground running. So consider that as you're preparing to go back. And then lastly, I want you to remember that wobbles are normal. You know, people often go back and they have this beautiful honeymoon period in the first few weeks, and then they feel themselves start to unravel. And sometimes it's obvious what the trigger is, and sometimes it's just a buildup of unforeseen difficulties with children being unwell, you feeling unwell, colleagues piling stuff on you because they see that you are so you seem to be doing so well, so they start to ramp things up, and then you feel like you are totally overwhelmed, and you think, what the hell am I doing? God, you know, should I really be back at work? Do I want to do a different job? But those feelings are normal. And on that note, I wanted to share with you one person's wobble. This is a bit of audio footage I'm going to play for you that comes from our resource platform, comebackcommunity.co.uk. That's a resource platform for the organisations who partner with us to access for their people who are on leave or preparing for leave or preparing to come back. And so this is Rachel's story. Rachel is in a really senior role in HR in a UK university. And this is what Rachel says about her wobbles.
I returned to work and was really disappointed that no one appeared to have missed me. My maternity cover was well liked and seemed to be doing a good job. In fact, they kept her on in a different role. I hadn't heard from my line manager for the whole time I was absent. The director of my service didn't realise I was back. No one was there to greet me on my return, and I generally felt like a spare part. This was combined with my new baby, who was my second child, hating nursery and screaming blue murder when I dropped him off 4 days a week. I had to drive to work back then to facilitate getting both children to nursery, and I'd cry in the car all the way to work, pull into the car park, retouch my makeup and smile. This went on for 6 months, and none of my colleagues knew this. I'd always suffered from imposter syndrome, and after a year out on maternity leave with all of the above, I was convinced I was useless. So what did I do? It was really simple in the end. I looked for quick wins. I identified that there were certain dross jobs that my colleagues were avoiding, and also some overdue bits of work. I prioritised those. Quite quickly it became apparent that the reason these things were getting done was because I was back and I felt part of the team again. It doesn't have to be the crap jobs. It could be applying for a team or organisation award or suggesting a new project or policy. But I'd suggest you identify something that makes a difference and will get you noticed, or will simply help your colleagues. I also did the same for my customers as well as my colleagues, and suddenly they were all saying how glad they were that I was back. In summary, pick out quick wins and win them. As for the screaming baby, it took 6 months, but he got there in the end and he survived. He's now a resilient, kind, robust and affectionate human being, and I couldn't be more proud. He settled into school really easily, and I think that was because of his early nursery days. At some point, every single parent, mothers in particular, feels guilt. As long as you're not breaking the law and doing what's best for you, your family, you are doing what's right for your baby.
I'm so grateful for Rachel sharing that, being really honest about her experience of going back to leave and having those wobbles, for what she described as being 6 months worth of wobbles, and colleagues just not knowing that's how she was feeling. So some comment from the chat then. Zara has said, it's not uncommon, but certainly a challenge for confidence to bounce back from kid number 2 and the job hunt. And she says she has a very strong background and did a lot of mental toughness training in sport in her younger years, but it's still tough. So I'm wondering if you would just put in the chat now whether, if you're back at work and you've experienced those wobbles, just give me a thumbs up or write yes, or they resonate. Or if you're not yet back, but you've had another experience of being away and coming back and you had the wobbles that first time around, tell me whether that's something that you experienced. I know I experienced that. I have 2 children and I still remember how I felt in those early months back at work. So tell me whether those wobbles resonate with you using the chat. Faye says yes. Now the juggle of still being in the house and me not in the office, so not proper time away. Yeah. Emma says, I learned a lot first time around and was a lot more open with my boss the second time around. Yeah. I think you have the confidence to, don't you? When you've done it before and you know that you will get back to being a really strong performer again, that you feel less afraid to say, God, I'm feeling a bit wobbly. I need some reassurance, because you know that you will get back there. Great. Okay, let's move on then to have a look at rebuilding connections with our colleagues and some of the additional tips for doing that in a remote environment. So I guess the key points I want to share with you here then, that the first thing is to be strategic. Okay, so there's going to be a whole load of people that you want to reconnect with when you go back, but time is limited, you know, and other people's time is limited. And in fact, actually, even before I start telling you about this, I think there's probably a broader point to be made, which is so many people go back to work and they think that they need to just dive in and be really task focused to show people, I'm back, I'm delivering, I'm as good as I ever was. But actually, the thing that really makes a difference is to focus on relationships. Certainly for those first few weeks, even the first month, is really to prioritize reconnecting with people, meeting people who are going to be instrumental to you helping find your way immediately in your role, people who are going to be relevant to career success later on down the line. That's really what we should be prioritizing rather than being in doing mode. Let's just connect. So that first point then, be strategic. Who is it specifically that you want to know that you are back? Whose radar do you want to be on? Instead of thinking, you know, the whole company or everyone in my department, think about who are the key people, who will make the biggest difference to you being able to get back up to speed, and who's going to make a difference to your longer term career trajectory. And I'll give you a quick tip. So often people hang back from being in touch with senior leaders, the people that might be really instrumental in helping you get places in your organization, because they think, well, you know, they don't know me, or is it appropriate for me to be in touch with them? Well, I'll tell you this, that when you are coming back from maternity leave, you have the perfect hook to do this. You can drop anybody a line and say, I'm just coming back from maternity leave. I've been away for X many months. And as part of me reorienting myself in the organization, I'm just reaching out to, you know, a whole range of people. And I would love to just get sort of 15, 20 minutes with you and hear, you know, your perspective, what's been happening in your team, or if you could give me some advice on how you handled it when you were away, if you know this person has taken leave themselves and have experience to draw upon. And if the person doesn't come back to you, well, shame on them, but you do have this perfect hook to reach out to whoever you want to. The second thing I want to encourage you to do is think specifically about what you want those individuals to think as a result of their conversation with you. What do you want them to come away knowing? So that's about what information might you want to impart, which might not be very much at all. And I'll come on to that in a minute. And is there anything you would like those individuals to do for you? Okay. So number 3, consider what's important to them. So when you're reaching out to people, if you can perhaps make a nod to the stuff that that person has been working on, you know, how has this been going? I'd love to hear about this and how it fits with what I'm doing in my team. Because let's face it, people love to talk about the work that they're doing and the things that they're interested in. Or perhaps you might have some insight into something that is of interest to them that you can share, and you could offer to talk to them about that later on down the line when you're back and fully acquainted with what's going on. So this fourth aspect here is build a plan. So that plan really is about, when are you going to contact these people? When do you want to get them in the diary? And what is it you want them to think, to know, and to do? Make some notes about that. So when you go into each of those meetings, you're really clear on the outcome. What do you want to leave them thinking, knowing, and doing? And this last thing here, a meeting mindset, number 5. I talk about going into listening mode and being a sponge. So one of the things that coaches often say to us is, well, I don't want to reach out to people because I haven't got anything to say. You know, I've been away for many months and I feel completely out the loop. And what if they ask me about this? Or what if they ask me about that and I don't know? And to them, I say, make it really clear at the outset of that meeting that you are in listening mode. So you're there to hear and to absorb. And you can do the same thing in group meetings right at the start, so that you don't feel like a rabbit in headlights. If someone were to say, you know, Sarah or Bethan, you know, what do you think about that? You can set your stall out at the start and say, came back from maternity leave a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really just absorbing, assimilating, making sense of what's happened, and say it in a really calm, poised way, and people will be super impressed by how centered and confident you appear. So that's rebuilding connections. Comments in the chat box. Let me just have a look at these, see if there's anything that you're responding to here. Claire says that she can relate, going back to the wobble, she can relate to this. She works for a small company and has always felt part of the team, but since being on leave, I've not heard from senior team members. It's made me feel unimportant and insecure. Claire, I hear you. And what I'll say to that is, quite often, the people around you who've stayed in the business, it's not because they don't care, it's because they're thinking, I mustn't reach out, because what if I'm done for harassment? You know, people have these catastrophic fantasies and think, you know, I mustn't reach out because that could be construed as sort of harassing you whilst you're away. And they forget their humanity. They forget that you're a human being and that you might be feeling alone and not totally absorbed in baby, but actually wishing that your team members were in touch with you. And that's certainly something that we do with the line managers we're working with and the coachees, is to think about building a comms plan for whilst you're away. How are you going to keep in touch? What do you want to know about? How frequently would you like the team to be in touch with you? What channels? Do you want WhatsApp, via email? Would you appreciate a voicemail, a phone call once a month? So any of you here today that haven't yet gone on leave, think about that. Think about what you would like from your team members, from your line managers specifically, perhaps, whilst you're away. And then that just stops this horrible feeling of disconnection and feeling, as Claire said, unimportant and insecure. Emma says in the chat that going into listening mode also makes those you are connecting with feel valued and shows you are interested in what's been going on in the firm. I completely agree. And so often we all feel that we've got to make a contribution rather than just listen. Okay, let's move on and let's think about this, starting to think about this third aspect, this third challenge about boundaries and having time for life outside of work. So I just want to put a little bit of commentary around pitching for flexible work, whatever that might mean, whether that means continuing to work from home a couple of days a week once we do have the ability to work back in, be co-located again, or whether it means, you know, you reducing the number of days that you work. There are 5 key things that I think we want to do. The first is around separating what you want from what you need. So sometimes we might think, well, what I would really like, or what I really want, is actually just to work 2.5 days a week. But the reality is, you know, that's probably not going to work for the firm that you're in, or the charity, the organisation that you're in. So instead, you know, get out onto the paper what you'd ideally like, you know, splurge that all out. This is what I would really like. But then from that, extract, you know, what do you actually need? What level of flex do you really need to make your role work? It might be that you have to have a hard stop at the end of the day to be able to factor in a commute to get back to a nursery or a childminder to get your little one. And that is going to be a deal breaker. If you can't have that, it's going to be very difficult for you to continue your role, or it might be nigh on impossible. So really work out what it is that you need. And that's really what you want to be asking for, rather than the whole shebang. I think it's really helpful if you can look through the lens that your line manager is looking from, you know, see what you're asking for from their perspective, and try and think about being a solution to a problem. Is the way that you would like to work in any way helpful to the way the business works? And I think the best example I can give of this is one. I was coaching somebody who had twins, and she worked for a global organisation that was headquartered on the west coast of America. And she was in a global PR and investor relations role. And she was based in London, and she knew that her twins tended to be at their best at the start of the day. She had a nanny, but she asked her employer whether it would be helpful for her to start working later on in the day, which would mean that she could then have more time online with the headquarters in Vancouver, and would also mean that she could Oh, that was it. So she could start early on in the morning and take a chunk out in the middle of the day. So she could start early in the morning and be talking to Asia, take some time out in the middle of the day, but then still be online later on in the evening to be talking to Vancouver. So she didn't go and pitch this as, you know, I want to spend more time with my twins. Can I have, you know, 3 hours each day in the morning to spend with them? She presented it as, wouldn't it be great if I can be online with Asia in the morning and be talking to Vancouver in the evening, and I'll take a chunk of time out of the day. And that worked brilliantly. And the fourth thing on there is just about opening up a conversation. I always advise people, before you put an official working from home request or a, you know, flexible working request, change your contract request in, go and have a conversation. Say, this is what I'm thinking about. How would this work? Rather than the first time your line manager hearing about what you want being on a form. Go and talk to them. And then I suppose the last thing to say, which is possibly the most important thing on here, is ask for a pilot. Okay, most reasonable people will not say no to a pilot. So let's try it for 3 months, let's see how it goes, and be really clear on what your outcome measures will be. Is it a case of, if these things happen and it works well, we know that we can continue, or might it be the absence of things going wrong would be your marker of success? I won't get into the nitty-gritty of what success might look like, because it will be different for all of you, but a pilot is a really good thing to do. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is to go into talking about getting organised for your return and involving your team, your family, seeing your family as a team, and not just thinking it's all up to you. But before we do that, I want to just pause for a poll, which I think Chloe's going to bring up for us. So I'm wondering, have you had a conversation with your partner or your family about how you would like them to support your return to work? So if you're already back, answer this retrospectively. You know, did you have a proactive conversation with your partner and or wider family to say, we need to think about how things are going to change and how we can best make this work now that we're going to be a dual earning, dual working family? Or if you're yet to go back, is this something that you've started to talk about with your partner or your family? So you're still answering the poll. 12 of you have answered the poll, and this is looking good. So the majority of you have had this conversation, which is brilliant. So 15 of you have responded now. There's just a few more of you. Go on, the other 5 of you. Press your button. I'm so pleased. When I wrote my book, it was less common. I think people were, certainly in the research that I did, and the 100 or so people I interviewed, they were telling me that they sort of shouldered a lot of the burden themselves. But I think it's becoming much more commonplace now for women not to see themselves as the one that should be left holding the baby. And it really is a team effort. Okay, so most of you responded, and 61% of you are saying, yes, I've had that conversation, which is brilliant. And 39% of you saying, no, you haven't. If you haven't, there's a chapter in the book about see your family as a team, so that might be a helpful read. Okay, so my opening gambit then for getting organised when you return to work is to think team. It is not all up to you. And I think this is where the family's mindset starts with us recognising that there needs to be a shift in the way that we view ourselves and our role within the family when we return to work. Because unless you are Wonder Woman, you know, capable of throwing in a full-time or a part-time job into the mix and not experience any deleterious effects, you know, then, well, you know, you're amazing if you are Wonder Woman. But for everyone else, I would say that, remember, Wonder Woman is a fiction created by man. And for most of us, unless we can ditch or delegate some of our responsibilities that we've had at home whilst we've been away on leave, then you're going to be one fed up, washed out, strung out superhero in 6 months' time. So we really do need to think team. The second thing here is about timelining your return. So for those of you, you know, who are still on leave, starting to think about what are some of the key things that you want to get in place to help you to make that smooth re-entry into the workplace. And again, there is a chapter in the book about timelining the return, preparing for a smooth return. And there was a top tip I was going to mention that just came to my head as a off-the-cuff comment I hadn't thought about. Maybe it'll come back to me about timelining your return. And that third piece about being in touch with work before you return, I think is so important. I know from the conversations we have and the research I've done is that those people who have used kit days tend to have a much smoother return into the office than those who have been away and haven't had any contact. And you can use some of that time to start to talk to your colleagues, maybe your direct reports, if you lead a team, about some of the ways that you might be working differently, some of your boundaries. And you can talk about boundaries, and you can talk about the things that are really important to you in your life outside of work. And I was really heartened to hear from, I was listening to a podcast with the co-founder of Netflix, a chap whose name I forget now. I was only listening this week. The Tim Ferriss podcast, really good. If any of you listen to Tim Ferriss podcast or don't, I really recommend it. And he was talking about how from the very beginning, he has always, having a family, he's always prioritized going away from the office on a Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock to go on date night with his wife, and it's a non-negotiable, and the whole team know that. And he mentioned on this podcast about just how good it was for his team to see that he was taking that time, because as the founder, as the CEO of the business, he was role modeling for them that it's okay, that prioritizing your family is important. I'm doing it, so you should feel okay with doing it too. Now, in at number 4 here, prepare for things to go wrong. I hate for this to sound negative, but it's true. All children, whether they're in a nursery or with a childminder, will experience some sickness as soon as they start in that setting. And so, it's come back to me now what I was going to tell you, and it links in with this, is in your first 4 weeks at work, back at work, if you are if the father of your baby is around, you're married, you're in a partnership, I really recommend that you hand the baton to your husband or your partner, your wife or girlfriend, and say, I'm returning to work. It's really important that I rebuild some strong foundations. If and when our little one is ill, I would like you to be the person who gets the first call from nursery or childminder or whoever else is looking after your little one, because you want to be able to focus completely and get completely immersed in work when you go back for at least the first 4 weeks, so you can really rebuild those connections, build some strong foundations without the distraction of family life within work hours. And that's really ties in with this prepare for things to go wrong. There will be sickness. So think about your backup childcare now, your backup plans, and get your other half on board for those first 4 weeks, which might necessitate your partner having a conversation with his or her employer to say, look, my partner's going back to work. I'm the first port of call. It's really important that she makes a strong return to work. So, I'm just giving you the heads up on that. And lastly, lower your expectations. So many people have high expectations of what they're going to achieve, keep things going well at home and have a great focus at work and do so much. Well, probably set your expectations and then dial them down by half. And I'm going to be running another comeback conversation event, one of these free problem solving events, later this month, 23rd of February, which is specifically on how to get through the early months at work. So if that is of interest to you, then you are very welcome to come along to that. And I'm just going to share my final slide with a few resources on there for you, including that first one that I've mentioned there, the comeback conversation events. February's is with Rachel Jackson. She's ex-Cisco. She used to head up their, she was a sales technology leader and was involved in their back to business programs. That's people coming back to work from maternity leave. She had 2 maternity leaves herself in the last 5 years, so knows all about this. You'd be very welcome to come along and join that in February. Go to comebackcommunity.co.uk and click on conversations. You'll find the details there to book. And then March is with Annie Abelman. Annie used to head up the comms team at the Lloyds Bank Foundation in London. That's the charitable arm of Lloyds Bank. And she now runs, she's a freelancer, and she runs a great new organisation called Mentor Mums, which is about matching women from the same role or the same sector with one another. So it's sort of pan organisation, and it's totally free, but you can go and sign up there if you are looking for a mentor, if you don't have a mentor figure in your own network or your own organisation. So thoroughly recommend going and have a look at Mentor Mums. Some other resources for you here, 3 podcasts. I really recommend the Leaders with Babies podcast. I was on that myself recently, talking about career progression when you work part-time. Lots of great episodes on there. Great podcast for first-time fathers. And our new podcast is Come Back Coach, and that's with me. If you go and have a listen to that, it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or on our website. You will hear 2 types of episode. One involves listening in on a coaching conversation between me and somebody who is preparing to return to work or who's back at work and got some problems that she wants to address. And in fact, if you would like to be a guest on a future episode and have a coaching session with me, it's absolutely free. We're looking forward to doing a second season of that. And then finally, some books that I recommend. I've talked about my own book. 2 for fathers that I really recommend are the Working Dad Survival Guide by Scott Beeson and Dads Don't Babysit by David Freed and James Miller. And then finally, our contact details, should you want to be in touch, if there's anything I've said today that's of particular interest that you might want to follow up on, or make an introduction to your HR team if you like the sound of the work that we're doing. I'd really encourage you to come and follow us on social media, particularly the handle @comebackcomuk on Instagram. That's where we're posting all info about the free resources for people returning to work. So those are the key things that I wanted to talk to you about today. And now I'm really keen that we get into your specific situations and the problems that you would like answering. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And it's over to you in the chat. So let's see what's here. Has anybody put a question in? What was the name of the resource for teachers you mentioned at the beginning? Yes, that is, if you have a look on Twitter, and you might want to email me actually, so I get the right handle for you. My email address is jc@talentkeepers.co.uk. In fact, I'll just put that in the chat box so you can message me. jc@talentkeepers.co.uk. But if you have a look on Twitter, the handle is something like MTPT, or type in maternity teacher, paternity teacher, and you'll get some, or Google that, you'll get some good resources. Will you be sending the slides out after the session? Yes, we can send a PDF of the slides out. That's from Claire. Yep, we'll do that. Go on. Entertain me. What's on your mind? What are you grappling with? Or ask it as a for a friend question. Okay, Kirsty's put something in the chat here. My concern is around how to effectively pitch for working part-time. How do we keep the same job on a part-time basis? Kirsty, great question. So I think you need to think about business needs here. Is there a part of your role that can be done by somebody else, or is there a part of your role that doesn't need to be done anymore? Because ultimately what you're saying, let's say for the sake of argument that you want to go down to 4 days a week, so 80%. You're essentially needing to say, there's this 20% of my role that either I don't need to do anymore, it can be passed here, or nobody needs to do it anymore, and that's how it can work. I hear so often when people go down to 4 days a week that they end up doing a full-time job in 4 days and they're only getting paid for 4 days, and that's not what we want. And the way to stop that is to look at your whole role and think about what bits can pass to someone else or not get done at all. And again, I can give fuller answers, or if you want to come and talk to me on Instagram, send me a direct message, perhaps we can follow up in a bit more detail. I want to move to Aisha now, who says, you spoke about using kit days. One of my fears was about getting drawn back into work and being seen as contactable once I'd had done the odd keep in touch day. Yeah, great shout there, Aisha. So what I'd say to that is making it really clear that a kit day is about reconnecting so that you can find out what's been going on. It's like getting your head back into the organizational space so that when you do start back, you are acquainted with what's going on, but it isn't about you being back and being contactable from there on in. So it's about being really clear what a kit day is, and explaining what the value is to your team members. So for you, the value is getting yourself and your team is getting back into that headspace, it's about reacquainting yourself with what's been going on. It might be about doing some one-to-ones with your team members if you have a team, through a whole host of benefits, but it shouldn't be about getting drawn into a project, because clearly that's not good for your clients or your internal clients, because you're not going to be there every day from that point you've had a first kit day. I hope that answers that question. Charlotte says, I'm lucky enough to have found a great job share partner. Fantastic. I've not done a job share before. Any transition or another transition, any tips? Right, okay. So there is a really good new Instagram account called the Job Share Pair. Instagram, go and have a look at that. I think that will be a really good resource, Charlotte. There is also a website called Ginny Bee, and it's I sound really strange, but it's about job sharing. Let me type it in here in the chat. Ginny Bee, I think it's .com, okay, and they are all about matching people with job share partners, and I think they influence employers as well to think about how job shares can work, and I'm pretty sure there'll be some good resources on ginnybee.com. And I just mentioned, I'll put it here in the chat box, the Job Share Pair on Instagram. And I know that one of them has just come back from maternity leave literally last week, and they're launching a business together. So that's really exciting. So have a look at that. Let me just scroll back up in the chat and have a look at what else you're asking about. So I don't know who this was, but someone says, I'm in sales and I'm worried I'll be seen as falling behind when I can't or work overtime now that I have a baby. Yeah, I used to do that a lot before and feel it will still be expected. Okay, top tip there is you really need to think about the strategic pieces of your job and focus on doing the things that you know your leaders, your direct line manager will be most pleased that you have done. I sometimes do an exercise with people going back to work who are going back to a very big job and are feeling overwhelmed, where I say, okay, I want you to imagine, however ridiculous you think this is, I would like you to imagine that you are working just one day a week. What would your line manager want you to do? And actually, I'm always surprised by how quickly coachees can come up with an answer for that. And it shows me that they know what the most valued, important bits of her role are or role is. So have a go at thinking about, what are the most important things that you need to do. And I think this is about having a conversation with your line manager about the discretionary effort that you used to put in, and say, I am going to be able to, give this amount of time, but actually I need to and want to spend time with my child in the evenings. It's not going to be possible for me to run on in the way that I used to. And therefore, my suggestion is that I focus on this, and this aspect of the role we handle it, put over here, because then you're offering a solution rather than being a problem. You're not, rather than saying, I can't do this anymore, you're saying, look, this is really where my time should be, and I think we ditch this bit, or this passes to somebody else. What else have we got here? I'm concerned about going back part-time as a teacher after this year of COVID, as it feels like everything is fast-forwarded in terms of technology, that it will just take longer to do stuff. I hear you, but you know what? I mean, I've got 2 children, and I've been really impressed by how the teachers have just adapted to online learning. And I don't think it will take you as long as you think to get up to speed on the technology. I really don't think it will. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to be back. School's going to be back fairly soon in any case. But I would recommend going and have a chat with some of your other colleagues and find out, get them to give you some shortcuts, some top tips, maybe even go and spend some time and sit in the home. I know we shouldn't be doing this, but in one of your teacher colleagues' homes and sit with him or her and see how they're doing it to make you feel more comfortable about doing that. Okay, what else have we got here? Kit days from Claire. My work has only agreed to 3 days. How far in advance of returning to work do you suggest starting those kit days? Is it wise to use kit days before pitching your return/flexibility so you're more aware of the company's current position? Yeah, Claire, I mean, you're answering your own question there. I think that's great. I think kit days are a good thing to do as soon as you are ready to start making the mental transition. So if you want to start doing that, say 3 months in advance, do it. But equally, if that feels like you're starting to think about mat leave and you feel like you're robbing yourself, so you're thinking about work, and that's going to rob you of this precious time of being on maternity leave, don't do it. And remember that a kit day obviously can be done from home. Even before the pandemic, a kit day could be done from home. It depends on what you're using a kit day for. So if your role is quite cerebral and there's lots of reading that you might need to do, that could be something that you're doing, sort of starting to reacquaint yourself with what's happening in your industry or your profession. It might be doing some online training, so think about what you need to do in order to feel more comfortable about going back to work. And I think what you've said there about, it's in your question about, is it wise to use kit days before pitching your return to work? Yeah, I think that's great, because you'll pick up what's happening in the organisation. It might be that you can be a solution to a problem and hear that perhaps there needs to be some cost saving with headcount, and you potentially could offer that by working less than full time. Remember though, if you're going to put in a formal flex request, there are certain legal timelines on how long your employer has to come back to you. So you probably want to start that process a little bit more than 3 months before you're due back at work. Let me go to the chat and just have a look at what else has come in. Emma says, I wish I'd done kit days the first time around, but totally get Aisha's point. I was concerned about people expecting me to get back to them. I found just coming in and having meetings in listen mode was great, or just going out for coffee or lunch, having a team day, or just a morning or afternoon is a great light touch. Yeah, completely agree with you, Emma. Aber, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but you ask about career change after maternity leave. Yeah, okay, so the one bit of advice I'd give you on that is go and have a look at a website called careershifters.org. I've run a webinar for them, and one of the members of my coaching team also does some work for Career Shifters. That's careershifters.org, and they are all about people who want to change career direction, careershifters.org. Let's see what else. We've got a few more questions coming in. We've got 10 more minutes. And like I say, if we run out of time, please feel free to come over and follow me on Instagram, Comeback.com UK, and you can always send me a direct message and come along to some of those events that we've got happening, because there'll be more answers for you there, and you can submit your questions for that as well. Okay, Julie says, I'm concerned that I'm having to make a career decision on a new role when I don't know how I will cope with being part-time in a new challenging role. Julie, my advice there would be go and chat it through. So if the role is not a new role, so it's not newly created, if there is an incumbent in that role, I would say go and have a chat with the person who is in that role, or say there's going to be a duplication of the role, someone who's doing a similar role. Go and have a chat with him or her about how they do it, what they think would need to give if it was going to be done part-time. It's not unreasonable to take your concerns and say, be positive. The role sounds interesting on paper. However, I've got a few questions. You might want to frame it as questions rather than concerns. Can you chat those through with me? Can you tell me how you think this could be done in a part-time way? So go and be curious, go and ask some questions. It's okay to have questions about that. Metna says, coming back in a pandemic has been a challenge with a 1-year-old. I work from home with her at the moment. How to manage teams' expectations, but also be able to show you're not falling behind and feeling guilty when having some me time as well during the day. Yeah, the thing is, okay, I've talked a lot about this over the years and do a lot with coachees on helping them think about what they need to get done each day. And they also need to manage their energy. And if you're going to get through a whole day and you're clear on what your priorities are for a given day or a given week, it really doesn't matter when we take those breaks. And I've been encouraging people to block time out in their diary, to go for a walk or have a 20-minute power nap. And remember, power napping does not mean necessarily having to mean going to sleep. It's just about lying down, being quiet, maybe having a cuddle with your little one if it's their nap time, just shutting off sensory overload and having a rest. You're going to get so much more done for your team and have a bigger impact for your organization if you are taking some breaks throughout the day. This is particularly important. I can't stress enough how important this is if you are having interrupted sleep. being sleep deprived is being compared through laboratory tests to being like drunk, okay, and cognitive impairment. So it's imperative that you rest. So Metno, I'd say block time out in your diary, might be 20 minutes, half an hour, factor in getting some fresh air, knowing that you'll be able to perform more consistently throughout the day if you do that. And find someone to talk to in your team who's likely to be understanding of that, because you will not be the only one, whether there are people in your team with kids or not. I think everyone will be struggling with this energy management. You will not be alone. Kirsty asks, with the 12-week trial you mentioned, do we still need to do a formal flexible working request for this? Depends. It depends how formal and officious maybe your organisation is. It might be that you can do that informally. I'd say it depends on the size of your organisation. If you're a big organisation and you've got an HR business partner, go and have a chat with her or him about that. Chat it through your line manager. So much can be done informally. The danger comes is if you have got a flexible working agreement in place informally with your line manager, then that line manager moves and someone else comes in, that things can be unravelled. But really, for a 12-week trial, even if your boss was to announce that she was leaving tomorrow, she probably wouldn't, as in she's handing her notice, she probably wouldn't be leaving too soon. So you would be okay from that perspective. But just chat it through and maybe get the advice from other people who have done a similar thing. Let's see what else we've got in here. Julie says, the new role on my job has been put at risk of redundancy. Okay, so I hope the same things still apply, Julie. Just go and have a chat about what that new role will entail, and whether you can whether you can get those questions answered. Kirsty says, it's okay, my line manager is a CEO, so that works, thanks. Brilliant, I'm delighted, Kirsty. We've got 5 minutes left. Let me just skip up and see whether I've missed anything. Okay, one new message. So Emma says, talk to other returning mums and dads at your business. You'll quickly see the reality of what others have been through, even if it looks like they returned with that issue, and they will completely relate your concerns. Absolutely. And you know what? It pains me to plug the stuff that we do because it always makes me feel a bit icky, but people keep telling me I need to because it's good stuff. So episode number 4 of the new podcast, which is called Comeback Coach, is out tomorrow, and that is about getting through the early days back at work, and it's with Rachel Jackson, who I mentioned is going to be my guest at the problem solving event later on in the month. And Rachel talks very honestly about how when she went back the first time, she felt this huge need to keep up appearances, and you know, just she was like a swan paddling furiously. No one could see her sinking. She felt like she was sinking and had to look like everything was going really well. And second time around, she did things differently. That's a really reassuring podcast episode. So I would advise going and having listened to that. That's out tomorrow. The podcast is Comeback Coach. Any other final questions? We've got 4 minutes, and I think we can get through another couple of questions. And let me know, give me some feedback. Have I said things today that have given you some reassurance? Have particular things resonated with you that I've said? You know, let me know if this has been useful. If so, which bits have been useful? Claire, that's so lovely. Thank you very much. You've been amazing. Thank you. Kirsty dropped me an email. So Kirsty's asking whether I do one-to-one coaching. We work through employers, so most of our coaching work is with people whose employer has brought us in, and then you're not paying for it. The organisation is sponsoring your coaching. So if you'd like help with making a pitch into HR, just email me, jc@talentkeepers.co.uk. I do the odd bit of private coaching. So you could email me about that, but I haven't got a lot of space, but you could email me about that, and I could always get you in with one of my colleagues who does do more private coaching than I. Kelly, that's very kind. This has been incredible. I'm going back in 5 weeks, and we'll start this conversation with my boss, team and husband right away. Thank you. And, and for any of you who, you can't afford coaching, I'm told time and again that the book is really good. Okay, I wish I was doing sales for somebody else, because it does make me feel a bit icky pitching my own stuff, but I'm told time and again that it's really good, and that's 12 quid, I think, on Amazon at the moment. The price fluctuates. And, I am sincerely on a mission to keep everyone everywhere feeling confident, connected and cared for when they take extended leave from work. And that goes beyond maternity. That's a man coming back from sick leave, a woman coming back from sabbatical. That's our mission. And because that is my mission, that's why I've created the podcast. And that's why we're doing these monthly free problem solving events. So February, I've told you, is with Rachel Jackson on how to get through the early months. Marches is with Annie Abelman, founder of Mentor Mums, on how to make an impact. April is actually about preparing for leave as a leader, and that's with the CEO of Byway, a new travel company. May's is with a psychologist who wrote the book Birth Shock, how to recover from birth trauma. She is a clinical psychologist. She's also a doula. So that's May's event. If you want to know about that, come and follow us over on Instagram, and also sign up for the newsletter on comebackcommunity.co.uk. I think we're into our final minute now. Faye says, really helpful, thank you. I'm also supporting our Women in Business Network and maternity policies too, so we'll mention you to them. That's very kind. Feel free to put me in touch. I'm on real mission to help organisations to hang on to their valued and talented team when they take extended leave. We're almost out of time, folks, so rather than questions go up there that I can't answer because I don't know if we're just going to automatically cut off at midday, then please feel free to drop me a line, come and visit me via the website or jc@talentkeepers.co.uk, and I wish you all a really smooth return to work, and remember, you are as good as you ever were, if not better.